Angalia naona tubumikiriza kulinda n'oyingira studio tuba kibadde timala okugamba.
You're welcome. For those that are watching us now on Blackwood Fire Network, it is a Thursday. Hope you guys are doing good out there. For those that are at your working place, I hope you're doing good. For those that are not feeling well today, sorry. And of course, for those that have achieved some success today, I celebrate with you. We are broadcasting live from Kampala, Uganda. However much the temperatures out, they are too hot. It is maybe it is a hot season, but we normally get rains. But it is a hot season. For those that are watching us from Facebook, Blackwood Fire Radio Station, and of course YouTube channel Blackwood Fire Network 2 and Twitter Blackwood Fire Network 1. Thank you for watching. I welcome you to this session where we are going to share ideas, and of course, if you have something to say about the above topic that we are going to discuss today, you're free to drop in your comments in the comment section, or um, you can even ask us to send you a link so that you can join us and make a discussion if you have something more than what we are going to say, or relevant what we are going to say. But my name, I'm INNOSSETU, together with my colleague. So before we go further, I'll let Maria say something to you.
You're welcome. On Blackwood Fire Network. Today is a hot, extremely hot Thursday. But of course, we are here today with yet another great topic like we promised yesterday. And of course, you're welcome for those who are just joining us. Today's topic is about Nigeria opening borders with Niger. And yeah, people usually in Niger, usually people have understanding between Niger and Niger. Yeah, people usually have misunderstandings between Niger and Niger. So, which one is Niger again? I thought Niger is Nigeria, not that. But well, Niger and Nigeria have an intertwined, of course, historical, cultural, and economic connection, despite being separate countries with distinct identities. Of course, the pre-colonial era affected the colonial era, of course. Before the arrival of the European colonial powers, the region that encompasses present-day Niger and Nigeria was home to several indigenous kingdoms and empires. Now, this includes the Kanem Bornu Empire, the Hausa city-states, the Songhai Empire, the Sokoto Caliphate, among others. Trade routes crisscrossed the region, connecting the Sahel to northern Africa and the Mediterranean coast. Now, before Niger and Nigeria were colonized by European powers in the late 19th and the early 20th centuries, Niger came under French colonial as part of French West Africa. Now, while Nigeria was colonized by the British, the colonial powers imposed their administrative structures, exploited natural resources, and introduced Christianity and Islam to to the region. Now, Niger gained independence from France in 1960, becoming a republic with Hamani Daori as its first resident. Nigeria followed suit shortly after gaining independence in 1960 as well, with Nnamdi Azikiwe as its first president. Now, both countries faced challenges in nation building, including ethnic and religious tensions, post colonial economic struggles, and political instability. Despite being separate nations, Niger and Nigeria have maintained close relations over the years. They share cultural ties, including the Hausa ethnic group, which spans both countries. Economic cooperation has also been significant, partially in the areas of trade, energy, and transportation. Nigeria, as the larger and more economically powerful neighbor, it has often played a dominant role in the region, influencing political dynamics in Niger. Nigeria, for a very long time, has been influencing the political dynamics, of course, in Niger. I remember some time when we had the coups that, of course, were happening in the French West Africa territories, Niger among the many, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger among them. Of course, Nigeria is having influence within the political dynamics of Niger. Nigeria comes in and says if Niger gives support to Burkina Faso and other countries, then definitely Nigeria is sending its troops to fight Niger. And well, the ceasefire, we saw them come down, um, and that did not happen. So I guess Nigeria thought it is easy for it to do this since for a very long time it has been influencing the political dynamics of Niger. Now, both countries face similar challenges, including poverty, insurgency, and environmental degradation. They have cooperated over various fronts, such as security operations against Boko Haram and economic initiatives within regional blocs like the Economic Community of West African States and the West African Economic and Monetary Union. Now, we know that despite general cordial relations, um, border disputes have occasionally arisen between Niger and Nigeria, primarily related to resource extraction, pastoralism, and security concerns. But though this time around we are seeing that for all the efforts that both countries have been, of course, going through having to address these issues through diplomatic means and bilateral agreements. Um, for this time, Niger, I guess, they have reached a certain level that, of course, they had issues some time back. And I remember there was a certain time where a lot of Nigerians were complaining about people from Niger entering Nigeria without, documents, and people from Niger also complaining the same. Apparently, they have had issues for some good time. Let's hope that this opening border, although they have been doing good transaction and good businesses, with all the issues that, of course, this time around they have decided to put issues aside. Of course, the border conflicts between Nigeria and Niger have occurred, sporadically over the years, primarily resolving around issues such as competition, border demarcation, security concerns, and some notable points above these, of course, we have the resource competition. The border between Nigeria and Niger spans vast territories with diverse natural resources, including fertile land, water sources, and mineral deposits. Now, the competition for these resources has occasionally led to disputes, particularly regarding grazing land for pastoralists and access to water resources for agriculture. Now, the exact delineation of the border between Nigeria and Niger has been a source of contention at times. Despite over border demarcations, disputes over border demarcations have arisen due to unclear colonial era boundaries and these, of course, discrepancies in mapping. Now, these disputes have sometimes resulted in tensions between the two countries and have required diplomatic efforts to resolve. Both Nigeria and Niger have grappled with security challenges, of course, including terrorism, insurgency, and organized crime. Border regions have often been vulnerable to infiltration by military groups such as Boko Haram and armed bandits. Now, efforts to secure the border and coordinate cross-border security operations have been crucial in addressing this security threat. Anyway, I guess I'll let you know so to say something.
Um, um, we know that yesterday Nigeria reopened borders with Niger. First of all, Niger had no issues of closing the border with Nigeria, but crossing of this border uh, stems too much in Nigeria. Nigeria is the issue is the stem that is in between the conflict that is going on that has been going on between Nigeria and the neighbor Niger. Uh, Uh, this action signals a potential thawing of tensions between Nigeria and Niger and aligns with the broader ECOWAS efforts to address recent political crisis in the region. We know that ECOWAS it is that organization that brings together all West African countries, but we know that when Niger, uh, or not even Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso had coups in their countries, we saw ECOWAS and leaders of leaders of ECOWAS that are in position, African leaders that are in position, putting sanctions to these countries that had, of course, acquired leadership by coups. Nigeria has opened its land and air borders with the Republic of Niger and lifted other sanctions imposed on the country following the directive of Tinubu, the president of Nigeria. This move comes into effect immediately after they complies with the decisions reached by economic of West African countries, and that is ECOWAS leaders during their February 24th summit in Abuja. They addressed this issue. It is, by the way, it is not the first time that we see uh, African countries, most especially neighbors, crossing borders for good evening, Key. Good evening to you, Key. We are doing good. Yeah. It is not the first time that like we see neighboring countries in Africa closing borders for each other. Recently in Uganda-Rwanda border, it was closed for over 2 years. Uh, However, it was opened later. The presidents had to agree. What does this mean? This implies that these conflicts they are majorly between statesmen or presidents of different countries. The conflicts they are with the presidents, because if at all the president Tinubu can come out like yesterday and say all the borders must be opened and the airspace um, for Niger to for Niger. So what does it mean? This means that the conflict has been between the president of Nigeria and, of course, the president of Niger. Uh, According to the press statement actually released by the president's special advisor in Nigeria, the lifted sanctions include the closure of borders, a no-fly zone, suspension of trade and financial transaction assets that were freezed, and travel bans on officials from, of course, Niger. Um, ECOWAS, when we go back backward a little, we see that ECOWAS leaders had agreed to lift economic sanctions against the Republic of Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea, due because uh, ECOWAS at first was not agreeing with these countries for overthrowing the government, the governments that were within those countries. That's why they tried as so much as possible to impose sanctions to these leaders, these new leaders in these countries, so that they can take back power to the presidents that were the incumbent presidents. So the president has, of course, elected. This is what, of course, what Tinubu wrote in his statements on the opening of Niger border. The president directed the following sanctions imposed on the Republic of Niger to be lifted immediately. This included the closure of land and air borders between Nigeria and Niger Republic, as well as ECOWAS no-fly zone on all commercial flights to and from Niger Republic, suspension of all commercial and financial transactions between Nigeria and Niger, as well as a freeze of all service transactions, including utility services and electricity, non-Niger to Niger Republic. Freeze of assets of the Republic of Niger in ECOWAS Central Bank, banks, and freeze assets of the Republic of Niger, state enterprises, and parastatals in commercial banks. Suspension of Niger from all financial assistance and transactions with all financial institutions, particularly the EBD and board. Travel bans on government officials from Nigeria to Niger and their family members, and among others. So these are the things that have been lifted that were lifted yesterday in Nigeria. So it is now free for anyone from Niger to, of course, go back to and do business with Nigerian government or or anybody from Nigeria, because the sanctions that were imposed on this country have been lifted. We can't take like we can't take this closure of we can't take this closure of Niger border for granted. ECOWAS for a long time has been it has been an organization that has been so loose to certain issues in African countries. I don't know whether it is realizing now because we see uh, before all countries, all Western countries imposed the sanctions on Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea. Uh, Before the ECOWAS was the leading organization, it was a leader because this is the group that leads those countries in Western Africa. So all these other countries, including Nigeria, they did uh, they did that strike. They imposed the sanctions, even reaching to that extent of crossing a border because of ECOWAS. So ECOWAS as an organization, I would think that its role in West Africa, just like East African Community, is to bring together all African countries, all West African countries to other African countries. But if at all um, we can't see success within, if at all if at all we see coups around of course West African countries or even other African countries, is it is it the right decision to close borders, to put sanctions rather than cooperating with the new governments?
These people have had issues for um, a very long time. Um, so Nigeria closed its border because of it claims, of course, it did close the border in August 2019.
Those are 3 years from now.
Those are 4 years from now. And as part of course of the border effort to curb smuggling activities, you see, um, illegal trade across its borders. You understand? Now, the decision was primarily driven by the concerns about the smuggling of goods, particularly rice and other agricultural products into Nigeria, which was undermining local production and government revenue. Of course, closing the border was seen as a measure to address these economical challenges and strengthening Nigeria's domestic industries. Nigeria closing this border, it wasn't Tinubu's regime at that time. And now, um, of course, every country has a right when such kind of activities are, of course, or if such kind of activities are done. For example, Nigeria also produces rice. But if they decide to put a certain price on the rice, and then the rice that is smuggled from Niger tends to be a little bit cheaper, where even they are not getting the importation fees or taxes, then that means, like they say, it was undermining the local market of the people in Nigeria. So it was an issue that was supposed to be dealt between Nigeria government and Niger. But for Niger, I guess they were so reluctant because they are benefiting more about this than Nigeria. So Nigeria was like, all right, if you are not going to, of course, work upon this, and definitely, but we've had these issues of smuggling throughout. We have the same issues of smuggling even on the East African borders. Um, I wasn't well versed with the border crossing because as you're crossing the borders, more especially uh, if you're using the road, it's just like these other usual movements. You don't feel like now I'm somewhere else or stuff unless you reach those different cities. Yeah. So you may even cross that boat. You may even cross from Uganda. You even enter Tanzania, but when you're still thinking you're in Uganda, the same thing is gonna happen when you're entering Kenya and you still think. But we have, as I'm going to use Uganda and Kenya, and even Tanzania, there is a lot of business transactions at Mutukula. Apparently, people move freely. Some people even from Tanzania enter every morning to come and study in the schools in Uganda that are next to Tanzania. So there is that free movement, there is that easy movement. I guess at times I'm even asking, but when it comes to business, I think it becomes a little bit stiff or tougher. I remember last time I bought some bags from Nairobi, and I didn't know. I just had my bags. Unfortunately, I did not remove the price tags from the bags. They are school bags. I don't remove because I thought this, okay, it's a good thing. You can go and move and buy stuff. Okay. So as I was moving, I saw some good bags. I bought some bags, and as I was crossing, we were like, all right, checkpoint, checkpoint, everyone get out. No, don't start. So I was like, okay. So you get your passports, you step down the bars, and you reach out. Of course, there are those who are stamping you out and those stamping you in. And so as we were going out to get those stamps, people were already checking the bags. Um, I think there were officers at the border checkpoint. So my bags were there freely. I found my bags were all piled. It was one bag that I had bought, another was what I kept from my mom or something. I don't know. So they were like, "Yeah, you have to pay for this stuff." I was like seriously, this is just something. Just anyway. So if they and also we know there is a certain I'm not a smoker, um, but there is usually that but sports safari sports. That's the one that comes from Kenya. Uh-huh. I grew up listening through the radio stations. We are going to arrest all shopkeepers who are selling sports because sports cigarettes were smuggled. And I think a lot of people preferred smoking sports or something. Sports or safari? I don't know. Sports like name is safari, yeah, I think. What was that? You made a safari? Huh. So, so as I was growing up as a child, I had those wrangles. So everyone would sell those things in a hide. Right, everyone was hiding them, and I was like, why? So we had a shop, and in our shop, of course, we were selling a lot of things, and there were cigarettes and other stuff. So so every time they were saying, you have to hide that spot behind the counter. All right, so someone will just come, sports, you don't put it on a display. So I was always like, why are they hiding this cigarettes and stuff? I'm not sure where sports is. Sports cigarette was Safari, yeah, Safari and Sportsman. But why were they saying Sportsman? Yes, so isn't that a Ugandan word? It was just Bamukubira Kalambo. How do they advertise ekintu kye basmugglings? So anyway, so that's how I got to learn about the word smuggling word. Because then I was told, yeah, they are hiding it because it entered at the borders without, of course, clearing the revenue and everything. So whoever is selling this cigarette is selling it, uh, yeah, is not doing right. So we had to sell that cigarettes when we are hiding them behind the bar. So each time I would come to the shop after school, they would tell me you don't remove those cigarettes from behind the counter because I think they had not paid for that. And I was like, how? Well, but as I grew up, I got to learn. So there is a lot of smuggling when it comes to borders. And this is not only about the African borders, but the entire world. We see them people smuggling themselves. People, people smuggling other people at the costa at the borders of Mexico when they are entering, of course, America. Those others who pass through Texas, people smuggle people. There was a lot of black markets going on, on different borders and different location. And so this at times is a disservice too. So so to pause, like instead of Nigeria, of course, closing its border on Niger, um, why couldn't it have it settled amicably and discussed upon? But again, we remember that Nigeria for and Niger have been having these border issues for apparently a very very long time. So I guess this time Nigeria was like, we need to take action. We need to take action because we are the ones actually that are going through the negative side of this. But of course, as always, Nigeria is economically stronger than Niger. It's more powerful than Niger. The population of Nigeria is even bigger than Nigeria. For the first time, I hear the government told Nigeria as a country complaining about drugs. All along, everyone has been complaining about Nigeria and the drugs in their countries. And here, the Nigeria government is complaining about that drugs from crossing from Nigeria and blah blah. But as always, there is always a lot than what meets the eyes when it comes to Africa's politics. People will bring different excuses for their own different reasons, just like Innocent was saying that definitely this was going beyond the drug, beyond the economic, sorry, the trade and the farming, differences to maybe probably politics. And if you remember very well that Nigeria has for a very long time influenced Niger's politics and political leadership. So at times when someone is putting their hand or their head in someone else's business, there is always an expectation. All right. So I don't want to think that Nigeria government did not achieve its expectation as the president of Niger had promised after they came into power, with of course the fact that they have been influencing their politics. That means they even decide who is, of course, becoming Niger's leader and who is electing who and who is winning the votes and so on and so forth. So uh, um, I'm forced actually to think this was something that was beyond the smuggling and these all other activities that, of course, were brought about as an excuse to with Nigeria, of course. We know that the closure was also aimed at addressing security concerns. That's what they said, which included the smuggling of weapons, drugs, and other contraband goods, as well as preventing the movement of criminal elements and insurgents across the border. We have the Boko Haram terrorists, who are commonly known and well known in Nigeria, but these Boko Harams extend their reach even to Niger as a country now. These two countries were colonized by different colonial lists. They are territory for different colonial people or colonial whatever. I don't want to call them masters because they're not my masters, but that's how people term them. Of course, Niger was colonized by the French. Nigeria was colonized by the British. At a certain time, we saw apparently Tinubu. trying to cross and support the French people. And I guess the British, of course, came and warned him, and that's why we saw Tinubu trying to withdraw from supporting the French people, though it was gaining a lot. But when we look at the smuggling of weapon, drugs, and other contraband goods, um, Niger has not been so much economically strong. And the weapons that probably Nigeria is blaming Niger to have, of course, allowed to cross the border. They believe these are the weapons that the Boko Harams are using. But we also have to remember that Boko Haram is a Muslim terrorist group that, of course, had also a hand in a murder and the killings of various young school children in Niger. Niger itself isn't like Nigeria that has apparently a lot of religions as of now. The biggest population of as well is of Muslim people. So some Nigerians believe probably some terrorists are recruited from Niger and so on. So there is a lot that is going on, and I think, given the fact that these disputes have been on for apparently a long time until action was, of course, taken. That is 2019. Even the Nigerian people say we have also been experiencing um, problems from Nigeria, but we had never decided to close the borders. So it is that the story, though there is those excuses, there is much that is going on. And of course, Tinubu coming in the picture, I guess he was like, all right, I'm not, you know, the other president, so I'm not concerned. So I guess that's why it was easy for him to open this border for Nigeria, because whether they like it or not, the smugglings are still going to exist. Because that's what happens on the borders. Those are the disadvantages of, such kind of boundaries. Oh, I will let you know so to say something.
Um, the issues of Niger and of course Nigeria, they are not far different from the issues Congo is having with of course Rwanda and Rwanda having with Uganda. Because in Uganda we have ever experienced, at least we have some experience of a closed border with a neighbor. We have some good experience that we have got between Rwanda and and Uganda. But like whenever countries they are too near, whenever countries are too near, whenever the proximity of the country is not far, is not too much, there are a lot of things that are shared between the same countries. Um, Historically, Niger and Nigeria have had relations, and actually, the current and historical relationships between Niger and Nigeria, two neighboring countries in West Africa, relations are based on the long shared border and common culture and historical interactions. They have like a lot of things they share in common, just like Maria said, they have a lot of things that are shared in common. Um, for me, I don't see any sense in crossing borders if you have those that strong attachment, that strong historical interaction between the two countries. When they share the history that these countries share, however, if at all whatever they do now it is based on this history, we wouldn't expect any of anything that is, we wouldn't expect any neighboring countries, neither an African country, to be fighting another African country. So the 1,500-kilometer long border between Niger at the north of Nigeria to the south cuts through one of the most densely populated areas of both nations, Nigeria and Niger. The center and the west of this border bisect the northern section of Hausa land, like she said, the home of the Hausa people in the north. Prior to the turn of the 20th century, there was no formal border here. Today we are fighting borders, we are fighting territory, we have even the liberty. We even cross borders and say Nigeria ends here, Niger starts from here. But before the 20th century, we see that there was no formal border between these two countries. But the current line is roughly the northern reach of the 19th century of Sokoto Caliphate. City-states south of this, such as the Kusina, Kano, and Sokoto, were allied in the system of Islamic Fulani states areas to the north. Maradi and Gobi refugee state and the Sultanate of Damagram resisted the Sokoto Caliphate. Both areas were colloquially Hosaphon in the center and west, and Kunuri in the east. In the east, both sides of the present border had been part of the Bom Empire. So the expansion of the French and the British imperialism in the period of course, 1890 and 1905 demarcated the line. I should even repeat this. The demarcations we are seeing in Nigeria today, why the border was closed. These demarcations, they were not there before. These countries had no demarcations like Nigeria ends here. But territorial colonizers, they are the one that demarcated this land, that demarcated Niger to be Niger and of course Nigeria. So the expansion of these French and British imperialism, because these countries share a lot, they have a lot of interactions between culture and how people behave in those countries. So the expansion of the French and the British imperialism in the period of 1890 and 1905 demarcated the line which would become the modern Niger and Nigeria border that we are seeing today, that has been opened today. So all what that was crossed, what was demarcated by the British and the French, because Niger had its colonizers and Nigeria. I guess if these two countries had one colonizer, we wouldn't see these countries separated like demarcations. We wouldn't see demarcations within these countries.
Maybe they would still demarcate
Mm.
because Nigeria is extremely big.
Mhm.
It would even be hard for them to control it.
Mhm. So during colonial rule, the French and the English languages were implanted on each side of the border after demarcating that this is Niger, this is Nigeria. Now they introduced their languages to different borders, making these people too separate to look too different from each other, but yet they're brothers and sisters of Western Africa. Along with culture, education, and political traditions, rival French and British interests meant that during much of the colonial period, trade and relations across the border was dis, uh, disordered. So Niger, entirely landlocked, was supplied with access to the sea through the fellow French West African colonies in modern Benin, Togo, and points of West. From 1941 to 1943, the French Niger colony was loyal to German-occupied France, and the border between the colonies were completely closed. Despite this, common Hausa language and cultural ties meant that there was much informal trade and travel over a long border during colonial period. So all all the impacts that we are these are some of the impacts, the consequences, negative impacts, consequences that we are getting out of the colonial era. We are still feeding the interests of our colonial masters because before even the independence, we normally talk about celebrating fake independences every year. Why would we allow we as Africans to be demarcated, to be like we are in paddocks. We are like in paddocks, different paddocks. This paddock is for Nigeria, this paddock is for Niger. Yet these people share a lot. They share a lot in every, like in history. They share a lot because all these things that we are seeing today, the demarcations, the line, the borders, the two borders that were crossed, these are things that were created by the French and the British in the area. So, besides that small history of that small history of Niger and Nigeria, there are a lot of relations that these countries have in common. So there are bilateral relations these countries have been doing for a long time. So we see that since independence in 1960, the two states pursued close relations. Each side has based diplomatic relations upon the non-interference in the internal affairs of the other. During the Nigerian civil war, president of Niger, Hamani, was an active mediator in the conflict. So each side has also strongly appealed to its former colonial masters to support in defense, and actually, unlike Nigerians and Cameroonians or Nigerians and Benunians relations. So there have been no serious border behind that. There have been no serious border conflicts because these countries have a lot. It's like East Africa. You can't separate East Africans. We share a lot. We share a lot, like a lot of things. So, Hausa language and culture ties are strong between these two countries, but there is little interest in a pan Hausa state. These people live in northern Africa. So the division of Lake Chad, although forced to go to the mediation between Chad, Cameroon, Niger, and of course Nigeria, awaits formal settlement and has not been a source of tension between the Niamey and Abuja. So Nigeria has an embassy in Niamey, while Niger maintains an embassy in Abuja. So this is the same thing that I was saying, that the conflicts that we are seeing today, the closure of the border we are seeing, it can be something. For me, I take these things to be personal, things to be between two people, between two leaders. They're not things for the whole country. Someone decides that that border, let it be closed. Like no one should now pass to come this side. No one should do trade with us. No one should. That is something that that is artificial, something that is created. So besides the bilateral relations between these two countries that have been doing over time, we see that there have been a lot of commerce within these two countries. So the cities of the southern Niger and northern Nigeria have been linked to the trans-Saharan trade going back to the medieval period. Cities such as Kano, that is Nigeria. We talked about Kano and what happened in Kano yesterday, and Kusina have a long been the southern terminus of trade networks which sustain much of Niger's economy. So Nigeria benefits from the trade and agriculture sales, especially Nigerian cattle taken to Nigerian markets. So while Niger's most direct routes to overseas trade are through Nigeria and Benin rail system, we see that there is a lot of commerce that is being done between these two countries. So Niger, I know Nigeria has been losing millions and thousands of millions of money without trading with, of course, Niger, because they have that history of commerce between the two countries that is stiff. So we see still still we see that there have been a lot of agreements and organizations between these two countries simultaneously working together. When we talk about that, each nation plays active roles in continental multilateral organizations such as members of ECOWAS, Trade Bloc, the African Union, African Development Bank, among others. So, understanding that and the ARG bilateral, the two nations formed the Niger Joint Commission of Cooperation, established, of course, in March 1971. Its permanent secretariat in Niamey, Niger. So there have been a lot of agreements that have been signed within these two countries. So you can't fool us now that the border is closed. Besides what has been going through, what has been, what these countries have been going through, what they have been doing over time. So we see that besides the agreements, these countries they have the same, almost the same ecology, the same ecology when like there are a lot of things that this country, you can't separate Africa like that. You can't separate Africa just because you demarcated Niger ends here and of course Nigeria ends here. You can't separate Africa so easily like that because we have a lot in common and like a big lot in common. So Niger's water supply is almost entirely dependent of cross-border sources, while northern Nigeria is almost as dependent on the waters of Niger River and Lake Chad. Both areas face rapid desertification and increasing demands for water. The two nations are members of the Niger Basin Authority. So, the Lake of Chad Commission and the Nigeria Joint Committee has a special focus on water and water development issues. So we see that the two nations are signatories of the Enugu Agreement that was signed, of course, in 1977 on common regulations for fauna and flora among the member states of the Lake of Chad Basin Commission. So on 15th January 1990, the two nations signed the Abuja Agreement on Control of Desertification, Promotion of Conservation, ration utilization, and development of lands. So, water resources and flora um, the Maiduguri Agreement, signed in 1990 and amended in 1998, further deals with the development, conservation, and utilization of water resources of the trans-border catchments. So there are a lot, there are a lot of things these countries have in common. So it is not a 3 year foundation for these countries to be what they are now, but these countries have been sharing a lot in common. We see that the last year's conflict between the Nigerian court that the Nigerian President Tinubu advocated for humanitarian intervention into the 2023 Nigeria's crisis because by then Tinubu was among the committee of the ECOWAS, so he had powers to have a say over a lot. Okay, okay, exactly. So two, not just Nigeria and Nigeria are same people. True, this is true. So these people have a lot, like fucking lot of things have a lot in common. By the way, for me, it is actually even up to now it is very difficult for me to differentiate between Nigerians and Niger. Like these people speak like the same. However much the other guys speak French, but these guys like they speak like they look the same. When you look at their cultural dances, you look at their cultural dressings, it's not so different from the Nigerians. These people they don't they look the same. They look the same, but colonizers demarcated lands in Africa, not only in Niger and Nigeria, but almost all countries in Africa. That's why we are separated. We are separated. That's why we don't fight for a common goal. That's why we undermine ourselves. That's why we our mindset is praising the oppressor, is praising the Bazungu. Because if at all the British and the French could come in this conflict, the border couldn't even spend a day being closed, because they are the people that planned for everything that we are seeing today in Nigeria and of course Niger. So we see that the West African leaders uh, uh, after realizing that uh, uh, West African leaders have threatened military like actions, not even Nigeria only, but like a lot of almost all West African leaders had threatened area before a military action against Niger's junta after it took power in the coup that happened. We see that the leaders gave the junta 7 days to reinstate President Mohamed Bazoum, who was being by then held a captive. So this is how the closure of the border. This is how West African leaders reacted to when Bazoum was taken up by the juntas. So we know that the junta warned it would actually resist any plan of aggression against Niger by regional or Western powers. Meanwhile, hundreds of coups supporters protested outside the French embassy in the capital of Niamey, that is Niger, before all this. Because however much we see Nigeria today like targeting or closing borders or opening borders today with Niger, but almost all West African countries that have been against Niger ever since Niger's junta took power from Bazoum. So, meanwhile, hundreds of coup supporters that protested outside the French embassy in Niamey capital, that is Niger, leaders from ECOWAS, the bloc of the West African nations, held crisis talks in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, to discuss of course, about the coup that happened in Niger, which followed the army takeovers in neighboring countries like Mali and Burkina Faso. So, Niger's people think that Niger's coup, it was the leading coup for other coups that happened in other Western countries. That's why almost all Western countries were against Niger, and actually these other countries that, of course, carried out coups. So this was the statement. The statement actually, this is how it read. It was like the regional bloc would take all measures necessary to restore the constitutional order if its demands were not met within a week. They wanted the juntas to take back power to Bazoum. So such measures could include the use of force and military chiefs that are met immediately to plan the intervention of the statement. So when these decisions were made, they sat in, of course, in Nigeria. So that's why I wasn't even surprised about, because they are the same people said they just put a fake. border up by the Europeans and EU. So, yeah, that's true. So, I was saying that like every Western country was against the actions of the juntas in of course Niger when a meeting to defy to put sanctions on Niger, it was in Nigeria. Why Nigeria? Why Nigeria? Because all the sanctions, factually they made all those sanctions after the junta has taken power from Bazoum. The meeting was held in Nigeria about putting a lot of sanctions, about using power to take the juntas away from power if they had not if at all they had not given power to Bazoum by then. So if at all these people agreed with the new government that was in Nigeria, we couldn't see because there are a lot of people that have suffered in this kind of closure. When you look at people at the border that used to do trade within, when you look at, you talked about someone may be in Kenya and studying in Uganda. In the morning comes to Uganda, study, in the evening goes back. There are a lot of people that have been affected in this. Like I said, we have fresh minds about the experience of a closed border within a country. I had the chance of visiting, by the way, of visiting the border area between Uganda and of course Rwanda by the time they crossed Uganda. But the way I looked at everything, like all things were looking to be abnormal. People were few on the road when actually the road had even started growing grass, ngakolas, but it was
Because
growing grass. Katuna.
mm,
It was growing grass just because the cars could no longer move everything. A lot of people have been affected in this, but not the deciders of this decision. Not the deciders of this decision.
we have seen this. Yeah, usually, Africa, at the moment they demarcated Africans' land, I think as the Western world used this as an advantage, it's the same story with the leaders we have. They use these demarcations to their advantage. So if someone wakes up and is angry with you, you close the borders. All right. But remember, these are just boundaries that we are poor. Some people have, relatives across. When they put these boundaries, it did not stop relationships. It did not stop, relatives from knowing each other. I saw today I was talking to one pupil. There is a school that I usually go to for young children. So I was greeting this little boy in one of the local languages. I said, "No, I'm a Kenyan." Okay, I was like, "You're a Kenyan, really?" He said, "Yeah." Unfortunately, he didn't know Swahili and stuff like that. So the story was, long. So when they brought these borders, it did not stop the relations that Africans have. When you look at the border of Uganda, Kenya, there are a lot of people who have similar names. There are a lot of people who are just a walkable distance away from Uganda. Some people just drive like 3 minutes. They are in Uganda. How will you tell me those people are different? Someone will stand at the border and shout, "Call INNOSSETU." INNOSSETU is in Uganda and I'm in Kenya and INNOSSETU will here. And still that friendship, that relationship still continues because no matter the borders, these people are socially the same. They meet, they talk, they discuss, they are related, they marry each other, they visit each other. So I think this whole border closing thing has a lot to do with our political leaders, you know. And of course, Nigeria has experienced several military coups through its history, with the most recent, of course, which occurred in 2010 when President Mamadou Tadija was overthrown by the military junta led by Major Salaud Jobo. Now we know that, however, it's important to clarify that Niger's coup, of course, cannot be considered as leading as an example of coups in the Western Africa. But we know that coups are generally viewed negatively by the international community and they are seen
They are
as
the same people that
detrimental.
they are the same people that were forcing, because ECOWAS is it's not an African supported organization. They are the same people that have forced these leaders, the Tinubus and others, to fight all these people that have made coups, because the governments, the way coups are made, they have supporters, they have Western supporters.
Mm.
They have, so if a coup happens, bad news.
Ah,
Totally.
we don't know that.
Maybe if a coup happens, bad news.
Mm. So, when Niger had this coup around 20, 2010, of course, and given the fact that Nigeria for a very long time has been influencing Niger's politics, political leadership, political decisions, Nigeria has had a lot of hands. So when this coup took place in 2010, that means that the president who came into power at that time was not favored by Nigeria. He wasn't the Nigeria's favorite. It wasn't on the decisions of Nigeria that the Nigerian Salau became a leader. So of course Nigeria had to make sure. I remember this coup took place for some good time, and though Nigeria realized that if this new president has come into power, that means we are not going to obtain a favor. Like I said, there is no way someone is going to put their nose in a business that does not benefit them. More especially when it comes to the political world. People are looking for where they feed. And that's how crazy the world is. If someone is not benefiting for the other, they don't want it. Now, given the fact that this Niger leader, of course, came into power through a coup, that means it did not give Nigeria a chance to, of course, dictate who should come into power. This obviously shows that the leader wasn't a friend to Nigeria. For whatever reasons that Nigeria was connected to Niger, um, they knew that they had to cut the ties. Like I said before, that all these excuses that Nigeria is bringing in that picture were just excuses that would give Nigeria, of course, the liberty to close their borders. But there was more than what meets the eyes. Now, a lot of people basically we are like, okay, we have also had issues although there are also still issues between Nigeria and Ghana and so on and so forth. But the issue of Niger and Nigeria closing border was a strong one. And I guess the president of Niger at that time refused to work hand in hand with the current president of Nigeria at that time. So he said, I'm not working with you because I'm not agreeing to your terms and conditions. I'm not the other president that you made, of course, Mamadou Tandija. So if you made agreements with him, giving him the power to come into power, giving him full support, I'm not doing that because I'm not Mama Dao. So Nigeria, you have not helped me to, of course, come into power. There is no way I'm doing this shitty business with you. And I guess this hit deep that they have to take the anger on the border. And Nigeria said, all right, if you're not doing business with me, then I'm closing the border, definitely. So all these other fake excuses are just things, to of course show. But I guess they thought the moment they closed the border, Nigeria being economically powerful than Niger, apparently, I think they thought this very guy will kneel down, or the leader in Niger at that time will beg and probably sign different agreements, but of course he didn't. Until now, we see Tinubu. And when Tinubu was coming, of course, I guess he was being misled, or he was being also, he was a puppet or something like that. He still is, though, trying to, of course, send uh, military soldiers to, of course, fight because Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali were trying to work together to overthrow, these other governments. Um, I guess he woke up to realize that he can't do it. I don't know how he withdrew from it, but he had made it public and very clear that he's, of course, going to attack. So then, from this attack not long ago, and now we are seeing they are opening their borders. Maybe they have reached a decision. Probably they have signed some treaties and agreements, maybe memorandums of understanding, whatever it is. But yeah, we see the borders open now, and let's see what, of course, goes on with Niger and Niger, Nigeria, economically, socially, and of course, let's see how this will take them, given the fact that we've had these conflicts of border issues for some good time. We expect to see positivity probably and a lot of cooperation between the two countries. And I usually hope whenever our leaders are making cooperation, at least I hope that the cooperations they are making are beneficial to even the local people of those specific areas, not the political parties, as it happens always.
Like I said earlier on, um, the people that have been affected in this closure of the border. However, Nigerians suffered a lot along the border with Niger as economic sanctions were put on this or within these two countries. So when Nigeria closed its land borders against in August 2019, several objectives were highlighted, including protecting local farmers, boosting local food production, and curbing the influx of arms that threaten national security. However, more than 2.5 years later, government has been unable to clearly articulate the gains from this decision, even though proponents believe it helped to curb smuggling. Let's, of course, see how this has actually impacted things in Nigeria. We see that the government has failed and has been unable to clearly articulate what it said that it's going to protect local farmers, boosting local food production. Because if at all they talk about the arms that were flowing into Niger, I've seen still today. I've been reading out news, watching out news, and I saw the president still of Nigeria says that they are not giving any more money to, of course, to people that are kidnapping children, kids. He said that it means things are still moving on. It's not because the Niger border was open like Nigeria. Uh, Nigerian conflicts are going to stop because Nigerian conflicts have been there. So first and foremost, we see that trade and financial losses have been made within this period between 2019 and yesterday when the border was opened. So while the closure aimed to protect local industries, Nigeria experienced both gains and losses. But actually, in a long run, we see, or to a bigger extent, we see a lot of losses being made by the Nigerian government due to the closure of this kind of this border between Niger and Nigeria. I told you about the bilateral relations that this country has in history, the commercial relations that these countries share. So we see that the incentive to smuggle subsidized petrol out of Nigeria remained even after the borders were closed. So these are things, it's not easy for someone to smuggle things like petrol. These are things that are done by well-off people. There are things that are not easy to smuggle, like things like petrol, things like guns. There are things that are not easy to smuggle. Money, things are not easy to smuggle. You can smuggle food, you can smuggle anything, but there are things that are not easily smuggled. So, unfortunately, Nigeria not only lost out on trade revenue within the region, but also faced financial challenges as a country compared to Niger. So, what does this mean? What does this mean? It means that Nigeria needs Niger more than Niger needs Nigeria because there have been a lot of losses made by Nigeria. I don't know why they are realizing after actually 3 to 4 years that since 2019, but a lot of losses have been done. Who are these people making losses? Who are people suffering? These are the native Nigerians. So they normally say that Nigerians are as scammers, what? The Nigerians, they are going through a lot, and they are going through a lot of things. So, for instance, petrol in Nigeria costs an average of 167 naira per liter, while the neighboring countries pay significantly 419 nairas in Benin, and in Niger it is 406 in Niger, and in Chad it is neither 360 and 438 in Cameroon. We see that this is a big difference. It is totally a big difference. It is a big difference, if we may say. These are losses. Who are these people making losses? Who are people that are suffering in this? These are the Nigerians in Nigeria, not the leaders in Nigeria. Because when we talk about leaders in any African country, let it be not even African countries, they have free electricity, free airtime, free data, almost everything they use is free. So smuggling remained a concern despite of the closure. So in terms of trade, Nigeria's exports to ECOWAS sub-region, much of which happens by land, declined from 2.24 trillion naira in 2019 to, of course, 840 1 billion in 2020 and 1.24 trillion by 2021. Those are big losses, of course, Nigeria has faced within this period of time when the border has been closed. I said that Ugandans, like Ugandans, and of course Rwandese, we have fresh wounds about the closure of a country, closing the border, because we know what it means. It is not something that is funny when we hear about closing a border and opening a border. It's not something that is funny to laugh about. It's something that is serious, something that is terrible, because a lot of people are being affected in this kind of stuff. So,
But
additionally,
wait, the border Rwanda ne Uganda babodaringako ne air. Why
mm,
are you?
one,
Really?
anyway, yeah, yali waliwo wonna, because people like wanted to go, you could go to Kenya,
Nga tumanyi ebintu giri.
mm, direct from Uganda to Rwanda. They could go through Kenya, then go.
Kuba kati how can omuntu kumanya emisimaku?
Those are excuses. And like when they were banning, they even banned like the traveling of officials from Nigeria to Niger, and vice versa. So officials automatically use planes. So additionally, insecurity escalated during this period. The Nigeria Security Tracker reported over 8,075 deaths due to violence in 2019, but by 2020 the number increased to 9,663, and by 2021 it had reached 10,343. So insecurity, we can't put insecurity, instability of your country, we can't blame it to another country. We can't blame Niger for insecurities in Nigeria, because even after the closure of the border, things are becoming worse day and night in Nigeria. Sorry. So the insecurities continued, smuggling worsened. When you look at the export money to the ECOWAS countries, these other countries, actually not only even Niger, everything declined. So Nigeria's economic system, economy had has been declining, rapidly compared to the recent years. So impact on farmers, we are looking at the objectives that were set by, of course, Nigerian government, or when it was closing, of course, the borders of Niger. One of the objectives, the government of Nigeria said that, of course, they want to protect the local farmers. So this is what happened to local farmers. Although some local farmers reported making some money during the border closure, others faced, and this is the biggest population, faced a lot of challenges in vain. In some border communities of Ogun State, farmers became victims of closure meant to protect them. This is the same thing I found at the border of Uganda and Rwanda, Katuna. Most of the businesses people had closed because cars were no longer moving along the road. People were like desperate for money. People were desperate for everything because nothing was going on in terms of trade. So
Closing off from the
2 years. So people like in communities, in border communities around Nigeria and Niger, these people were affected so much. They were not working. Like people in Ogun State became victims of the closure meant to protect them. How can you protect someone by crossing the border? These are the people. These are the farmers that were doing that, that were selling farm products, farm produce to, of course, Niger. But you're crossing the border now. How are you going to protect them? So I think that this was a blunder for Nigerian government. So security agencies, customs like police and the army extorted hundreds of millions of naira from farmers. These agencies used a document bearing the name of the Nigerian Agricultural Guarantee Services to demand payments. So the farmers were told that their produce was no longer permitted inside Nigeria along anything else suspected of being smuggled. So whenever we have crisis in countries like border crisis, a lot happens within security agencies. They use this chance. Uh, actually, the good example is the COVID-19 situation. COVID-19, this is where we see that security people, they need more money. It's like they're not even paid in African countries. I don't know what happens outside, but whenever there is a crisis, they call in the police, they call in the army to maintain the law, to maintain law and peace and order. But in the process of keeping the law, these agencies, there is a way they exploit people. So a lot of farmers were exploited by, of course, these agencies, these security agencies, because they begged hundreds of millions nairas or money from farmers, because of course everything that was done in terms of trade was considered to be smuggled. So these people, the implementers of this border system that has been going on between the two countries, affected farmers like that. So to bring their farm produce into Nigeria, even though they were already Nigerians producing with Nigerian oil, they had to obtain the quarantine document, which acted as a payment voucher of numerous checkpoints. The situation contradicted the intent purpose of the border closure. So whenever things happen like that, whenever they say that this is a document to allow you, if at all there is a crisis, this is a document to allow you move to a certain place. This is a document to allow you move your produce to another place. That is money. This means money. So farmers, which of course expected good out of this border closure, to be protected as farmers, to get some profits. Rather, a lot of farmers have even of course have even run out of the farming business because it has not been profitable as they expected. So we saw before actually today's opening, yesterday's opening up, we saw partially opening in December 2020, 1 month before the commencement of the African Continent Free Trade Agreement. Nigeria opened 4 out of the 8 major land borders, like Seme, Eira, and others, under the phased reopening arrangement. So in summary, we see that while the border closure had some intended benefits for the Nigerian government, it just resulted in two most significant trade losses in Nigeria, like financial challenges and increased insecurities instead in Nigeria, as I've mentioned them. The president of Nigeria is the
There's a whole moment. And the border was closed, I think, by Muhammad
Buhari.
Buhari. Um, it's I don't know how some governments really work, but how can a leader just wake up one time and make decisions, an economical decision without consulting the economists of the country to at least have a discussion and see how to go about this, or probably to prepare the people and the business people on what is going to happen. So I think before even they had made this solution, they should have at least decided on what they were going to do for these local people, because you cannot say you are closing the borders for my benefit when you have not put me into that position of course, when you have not secured, my business. We know that Nigeria lost revenue from reduced cross-border trade with the Niger. Now, the closure disrupted the flow of goods and commodities between the two countries, leading to a decline in custom duties, tariffs, and other trade related revenues collected at border checkpoints. Now, this loss of trade revenue has contributed to a reduction in government income and fiscal pressures. Nigeria exporters who relied on Nigeria market for their products experienced a decline in sales and revenues. The closure of the border limited their access to Nigeria's consumer base, resulting in lower export values and decreased earnings for business engaged in cross-border trade. Now, we know that the closure of the border affected Nigeria's agricultural sector, particularly producers of perishable goods such as fruits, vegetables, and livestock. Farmers and agricultural traders face difficulties in accessing Nigeria's markets, leading to oversupplies and price declines in domestic markets. These are resulted in income losses for farmers and reduced profitability for agricultural business. Um, I'll feel like why I felt like the border closure of Nigeria and Niger by the government of Nigeria at that time was a selfish decision. If the government of because first of all these issues had have been running for a very long time. So I would love to think that before the government of Nigeria made this decision, they they should have at least, or maybe they may have sat and made a very good research and come to a conclusion with having measures put in place, because as the whole citizens of the country, they have to cater to each and for each and everyone's business, more especially in the business arena. But it shows that the Nigerian government in 2019 just woke up from the blue and decided to close their borders. Because if you can put sanctions on on the people, of course, delivering goods apparently in the same country, but those who are neighboring the borders needing a lot of documentation for them to be able to bring their goods to the capital or to these other nearby states, then that means you have done a great disservice to your own citizens. At all, we also have uh, there are also known farmers, agricultural farmers, who of course were engaging a lot in the big scale production of perishable goods. We know very well perishable goods are goods that of course spoil so fast or they go bad very fast. These are goods that need quick consumption. Before even they had put this, they should have at least, of course, given those people probably ways or means of making sure that their goods are moved from the other far place near the border to probably the consumers in the capital, in the different states of Nigeria. So you cannot wake up and not at least tell your farmers or your traders about what is going to happen, and they all just hear from the news the borders are closed and you had trucks filled with the food, commodities, stuff, and you just wake up and tell people we have closed. So what do you expect them to do? Nigeria actually is a big country. I believe they could consume all those things because apparently a lot of people are going hungry in Nigeria. Um, a lot of people cannot even afford a 3 square meal. The prices of everything apparently are so high. Now, what is the essence of you creating that border? Is it not to produce enough for your people? Is it not to for it to be an advantage to your people? But you close the border and then hike the prices of commodities because you knew you hike the prices of commodities and then it comes unbearable and unaffordable for the people in your own country to, of course, access. And now, we should also be aware that a lot of people who are dealing in the big agricultural products in Nigeria are actually people who have a big connection with the people in power. These are senators, these are governors who are owning these big businesses. So um, you decide to close the border because the governors are not taking their businesses to Niger, they are not exported, but it is the local people. It is a disservice, probably, it is a loss to these big people who have big stocks and big markets for people to be smuggling goods or for people from Niger to be bringing, let's say, rice from Niger and selling it at an affordable price. So this is why I said this was a war. This was a war that was actually more than what people thought. So it is very important that these people stop this kind of trade so that they can still hike the prices and the Nigerians will have nowhere to buy cheap food and will still have to forcefully consume these expensive commodities all in the name of security and of course doing better. The closure of these borders did not actually do better like they had promised the people of Nigeria. I expected to see the Boko Haram, of course, stopping completely. I expected to see the drug use and consumption in Nigeria reducing. I expected to see Nigerians at least having something to eat, For a very long time, a lot of people that they go out without food, but rather it became more terrible. And this is why I said this was a market plan, I should say. This was an economical, political war that was, of course, between Nigeria and Niger. Because remember, Niger was delivering rice to Nigeria, a very big quantity of rice at a very cheap price. And then the Niger rice was very greatly cheaper than the rice that was produced in Nigeria. So I think it was important for the business people to, of course, sabotage Niger because they were not benefiting from this. If you stop your people from accessing something cheap, make that thing available for the poor people who can't afford that expensive thing. If you decide to stop Niger from bringing, products in, cheap products to the people, then reduce the price. Reduce the price, but rather Nigeria increased the price because they knew there is nothing Nigerians can do about it. Because they knew these people will, of course, eating is a necessity. It's a need that people cannot do away with. So, and of course, the business people, I believe, it's funny, as other people are weeping, other people are crying, a lot of people are benefiting from the pain of others. I think this is nature in the world, I guess, because I see that bullshit happening all the time. A lot of people benefit from other people's predicaments, and this is what exactly happened between Niger and Nigeria. it is well known that, of course, when we look at the people, of course, dealing with um, cattle and, of course, beef, the beef industries. Most of the beef industries in Nigeria are governed or owned by the Fulani people. And the Fulani people, of course, at the have a very big say when it comes to Nigerian political, the political leadership. And so you can see how the game was played. You can understand how it was important for the few people, of course, how the closure of this border was so important, to a few people, leaving the majority of people unsatisfied, very disturbed, hungry and angry, and nobody cares. And I think by the time Tinubu came into power, he found Nigeria clashing. He found Nigeria going through a lot, and it was hard. Um, you know, I guess Nigeria is at times, maybe when a territory, let me put it territory. When a territory is extremely big, I guess these are the things that really happen. Nigeria is extremely big. There are other places or some areas in Nigeria that even have never seen, their president. They only see their presidents on TV, and the president has even never taken time to reach those other areas. Apparently, you just even hear there is the other side of the country, and nobody even knows what happens in that side of the country. And and that's why I think they decided to have the system like the US system a little bit, because it's a little bit big. So they tried to, of course, break the administration. I usually see they have the US administrative system, not exactly, but a little bit similar, because of of course, the size of their country. Now, you imagine such kind of a country where even some people will just see probably their president, have never seen one. Others have even never come to Lagos, and they just hear the is. And of course, it has different cities. Um, you can imagine that kind of country where even the division of there is no division of labor. The labor is not equally divided, where there is a lot of segregation, where the states are not given equal privileges. So you got to learn probably this is a green state, this is Port Harcourt, this is whatever. Because the resources are not equally divided among the states, then you realize that there is a lot of underdevelopment in different states. There is a lot of unemployment in particular states. There is a lot of suffering, poverty, imbalanced, life in specific states. Apparently, as we could, at times, when I look at the situation in Uganda at times, I'm like, all right, we are going through this, but I think Nigeria is living terribly. Nigeria was a giant some time back. They apparently their currency was huge. There is, by the way, there is a certain year where even the Kenyan shillings went higher than the naira, and I was like, what is going on? So, uh, given even when you look at their social structures, you'll understand that most of the Igbo people in Nigeria are business people, though they are not so much into education. Igbo people wake up one time and all they dream about is making money. All they want is money. So most of them have been in businesses, and most of them have had land in Lagos. Last time we heard, yesterday, Keith was telling us that their houses and their houses in Lagos were, of course, taken away from them. So because they were not Yoruba people, and they were taken and given out freely. So you cannot just come and decide to take my land when my house that I've built when I'm a citizen of that particular country. I have a right to live where I want to live because I'm a citizen. So even you hear Igbo people saying we are the ones who constructed Nigeria. We are the ones who constructed Lagos. The most funniest thing about the Igbo people that I still ask myself, all right, Igbo people are so talented and they are so good at making money. They don't really care. These are the people who will even sell you, and you will not know. You'll be working with an Igbo person, and you will not know that they are discussing the price of exchanging you for money. This is how this is how much these people love money, which is okay. Everyone loves money, yeah. So, but uh, when they go to a place, they forget home. I think this is a problem they have. I don't know whether, because if you go to their areas, it is now of recent that Igbo people have decided to develop their areas. We are seeing now, but even Onitsha is not looking all that beautiful. But we see them trying to at least go back home and do something. But these are people who would leave home for good. They even don't visit home. They concentrate. I think they love some luxurious life a lot. That most of them, when they reach to Lagos or somewhere, they don't want to go back home. Because remember, they have been disserved by their government. Like I said, the Nigerians' resources have not been equally divided within the states or among the states. A few people have benefited from these resources. Others are working from hand to mouth. Others are working like a horse's back and receiving little. So when these people reach places like Lagos, they don't come back. Why don't you go back home and put something there? Because at the end of the day, these people are so cultural. There is no way you're going to be buried in Lagos. At the end of the day, you're going back to your ancestral home. So people have been seeing you driving a Mercedes, Benz, Prados, whatever, and then at the last day you are going home where there is a small hut. You have not done anything to develop your own side. So I think after they confiscated or took their houses and their businesses that they had in Lagos at that time, a lot of them woke up to realize that yes, I think it's high time we do something home because this is definitely not our home. Now you can see because I've not seen anyone. I'm going to use the example of Kampala or Uganda. Kampala is in the Buganda land, and it's very funny that even most people who are having land and real land in Kampala, by the way, are not Baganda. The ones who have houses and commercial buildings. But we've not had anyone complaining about you are taking the houses and stuff because it is their right. This is their capital. This is even if it is in the other kingdom, but this before that kingdom, there is this one part which is Uganda, and people have moved to other places. We have a lot of in my home area, we have a lot of other people who don't speak that the tribe over there, but they are living there. They are owning land, they are owning businesses, and actually, most of the people owning the businesses in the town are Baganda people. They decided to move to that town. They have been to they have married, they have businesses, they have bought land, they have built houses. So it will be surprising when you hear their names and you're like, but they will be speaking the language that like they're native over there, and nobody is actually complaining about it. So how come Nigeria is a big place? Nobody should be complaining about who is staying where and why is this person staying here. But of course, this happens because of power. All right, there is that power that has been in the hands of some people for a very long time that they think now they are turning to gods and decision makers, and probably they have become. So maybe
So, uh, uh, the closure of the closure of or like we can't like Nigerian problems, challenges, internal problems. We can't, of course, like I said, we can't blame Niger for challenges that the government of Nigeria has failed to do. It's not that unless when we are fools, but we are not fools because we can see out of the box that you can't say that the challenges Nigeria is having, you're closing the border because of the challenges that you have within your country. So there are a lot of failures, there are a lot of challenges that the government of Nigeria is evident in the declining capacity of political leaders to recognize systematic risks. So these challenges persist with adequate measures to address them. Some of the internal challenges as Nigeria has failed to solve, rather than blaming other countries for its challenges that it has failed to solve as a country. We have electoral fraud. Almost most of the African countries, we have actually the same problem, electoral fraud. So, despite of the repeated occurrences, effective measures to combat election fraud remain elusive. A lot of election fraud is going on in Nigeria. We can't blame election fraud to Niger, which is actually a different place from Nigeria. We can, but these are all these things are blamed to be Niger's problems. Nigeria blames all these to Niger. So there are a lot of terrorist attacks in Nigeria that continues to grapple with terrorism and government struggles to mitigate its impact. We have seen that one of the objectives why Nigeria closed, of course, the border, it was because of the security concerns in Nigeria that were blamed to, of course, Niger. But even up to now, we see a lot of terrorist attacks and violences and threats. They have been increasing between actually 2019 and today. They have been just increasing. Nigeria has failed to solve all this within as a government. So the other thing is the herder farmer conflict. The crashes between the herders and the farmers persist, leading to loss of lives and displacements. Why is it that Nigeria, instead of actually looking at closing the borders where people can get money, where the government can get a lot of profits to support infrastructure in the country, to support a lot of projects and programs within a country, why is it that instead of closing the border, why is it that government doesn't focus on such conflicts that are going on within a country, the herder farmer conflict, where the clashes are between the herders and the farmers? This thing still persists even up to now. The government has done nothing about it. People are killed. Actually, some people call it this. Is it? Mm. Actually, people are like, uh, instead of blaming Niger, instead of looking at other things, people are dying silently. There is something that they call in Nigeria silent genocide. People are killed every day, but the government is not doing anything about this. I was saying that I was reading news today, and I saw like the president of Nigeria says that they are not giving any ransom to any kidnapper. If you're kidnapping someone, just kidnap kids the way you want. Like they're not negotiating with kidnappers anymore. This is what I heard from the president of Nigeria today. So it has failed to solve that conflict between the herders and the farmers in Nigeria, but it's focusing on other things. So it is focusing on closing the border, which actually would have provided money that can even fund to end such conflict. So the armed banditry, these are some of the internal problems problems the government of Nigeria has failed to do, but is focusing on fake things, is focusing on personal interest issues with Niger. So we see the armed banditry. These are armed groups that engage in criminal activities, posing a significant threat to the security of Nigeria. Nigeria is a big country, but we would have expected a lot from Nigeria because Nigeria is blessed actually with oil. It is blessed with oil. It can support all whatever is needed within the country. But we see this armed banditry in Nigeria that still exists, that still threaten the security of the country. These are not from Niger, but the government has failed to do this. We see police brutality to the natives, to the people of Nigeria. The government is doing nothing about it. Yesterday, but one, the police arrested over 11 people, including a woman, 11 people for not fasting in Ramadan. So the police, these instances of the police brutality in Nigeria remain unsolved, eroding public trust in the law enforcement. A lot of people in Nigeria they're not believing in the law just because of actually the police and the government. Because the police is the government, it has failed because of course, the police brutality. The government is not focusing on internal failures, on internal blunders it has made, but it's focusing on closing borders. It's focusing on, of course, posing like making other countries to be responsible for its problems, which is not right. Um, we know that Niger, of course, Niger, like I say, Niger did not close borders with Nigeria. It is Nigeria which closed. So Niger, of course, responded positively to the reopening of the Nigerian border yesterday. Nigeria actually announced the conditions actually that were put there. These are the things that were made by Nigeria because there is no official statement by Niger that we have also we have put sanctions against Nigeria about all these were done by Nigeria. So Nigeria announced the lifting of sanctions against Niger, effectively opening its borders with, of course, the Shelinian nation. The decision followed calls for border reopening from Kano's governor earlier this in the week, that is yesterday. So the lifting of economic sanctions allows for resumption of land and air travel between the two countries. Now allowing of movements now is allowed within the two countries, whether on land or air is allowed. Before it wasn't allowed. But I don't think there is any normal, there is any average person who travels by air. These are government officials that travel by air. So we see that between the two countries, we see that with the aim of reviving cross-border trade, particularly in agricultural products and livestock, because while the Benin promptly reopened its border after the recent extraordinary summit of the ECOWAS heads of state in Abuja, Niger has yet to formally respond to the announcement. So Nigeria has been making a lot of losses in agriculture and livestock, which it of course faked to protect at the beginning of the closure among the objectives that it put during the closure of the border. But people have been desperate in the country. People have not gained anything within this kind of closure that was of course put by the government because they don't give a shit about the people. They don't give a shit about the people. The government don't give a shit about the people. it's something that I was saying that these people, this is a personal interest. You can't lie about. Nigeria is going through a lot. Nigeria is going through a lot. You can't tell me that the closure it is for the protection of the farmers. It is for security risks. Nigeria is going through a lot of things that a lot like a lot of things. Nigeria is going a lot of things that the government would have focused on rather than closing borders because borders help to bring in the country a lot of things, like a lot of things. When you look at those people near the border, I got a bad experience when I went to Rwanda Uganda border. The way people were looking, the way people were finding, like, they were fighting to fight like to make things end. It was a terrible situation.
First of all, I feel like there was a lot of reasons that were very personal because we know that Nigeria's economy is heavily dependent on oil, with the oil-rich Niger Delta region accounting for the majority of the country's oil production and revenue. However, the benefits of oil wealth have not been evenly distributed across the country, leading to disparities between oil producing regions and non-oil producing regions. There is a lot of imbalances of resources in Nigeria, and this shows that there is a lot. Nigerian government, as it is, it does not really care what happens and how the decisions they make affect other Nigerians. And this is why it was even easy for them actually to wake up and make that decision, not minding those people who are going to be affected by these. The majority of the population does not really concern them, as long as a few of the people in Nigeria are happy with the decision. It is okay. There is what we call sacrificing. You can sacrifice for a bigger cause, but I never saw any positive results coming out from this very decision that Buhari made at that time. We know that Nigeria operates a federal system of government where revenue is shared among the federal, state, and local governments. However, the formula for revenue allocation has been criticized for favoring the federal government and the oil producing states at the expense of other states. Now, this has perpetuated disparities in resource allocation and development between oil rich and these other states. The infrastructure development in Nigeria has been uneven, with the significant disparities between urban and rural areas and between different regions of the country. And some regions have often received more investment in infrastructure projects such as roads, ports, and electricity compared to other regions. There are places in Nigeria that even don't have, receive electricity for 2 hours a day. And when those 2 hours are done, then it's going to be dark. And that's why, by the way, have you noticed that every Nigerian household has a generator, no matter how poor? No, no, true. No matter how poor, every Nigerian household has a generator. Every Nigerian household, more especially though, but they have a they have a generator. No matter, you will even find that the poorest people having a generator because this is a big investment. Just like Ugandans will decide that let someone have a guard. Now it is important for Nigerians to have, of course, these generators because of electricity issues. There are some other areas that don't have generators. For them, 100% they will have their electricity. We know that the political power and the influence in Nigeria have historically been concentrated in certain regions and ethnic groups, which has influenced our resource allocation and development priorities. Politically influential regions have been able to secure more resources and government projects, leading to imbalances in resource distribution. Now, we know there's like the Fulani people, the Fulani, let's say, the Fulani and who are these other people? The Hausas, though they have benefited a lot, but not so extremely a lot. Even the Yoruba people have benefited from this a lot. So you can see that there is that favoritism that is going on in Nigeria. And like I told you before, a lot of people who are doing business, the one we call hands-on business, the direct business of now, I'm carrying my goods right now in a truck, and my goods are going outside Nigeria. Most of them are Igbo people. Because first of all, they are not given the privilege to do business on their own. Secondly, the sanctions, there is a lot of course, corruption. The country itself does not favor them to become businessmen in their own country. So you will realize that a lot of people who are dealing in these Nigeria business, border to border transaction, border to border business trade and trade are actually Igbo people, because they are trying to run away from the sanctions. They are trying to run away from these, the segregation, or when it comes to business. So they are trying to look for places where they are not going to be segregated. And this is why, by the way, it's not important, to the government to look into these issues and mind how it's going to affect the rest. Now, we know that conflict and insecurity in certain regions, such as the Niger Delta and the Northeast, have hindered development and investment, exacerbating resource imbalances. Now, in these regions, the presence of armed groups, militant activists, and communal violence has discouraged investment and development activities. We know that Nigeria, as a country, they have, of course, experienced a lot, and more especially segregation towards each other. You will find that this Yoruba tribe is undermining the other. Some others will, of course, say we are not going to speak our own tribe, but rather let's adapt to this so that we can fit in. To the point that some others probably will decide to call themselves another name so that they will not be undermined within the particular society. Igbo people have faced historical marginalization and discrimination in Nigeria dating back to the pre-colonial era and exacerbated by events such as the Biafran War in the 1960s. We know that this marginalization has limited their access to resources and opportunities compared to other ethnic groups in the country. The distribution of resources in Nigeria has often been skewed in favor of certain regions or ethnic groups, of course, which resulted in disparities in access of education, healthcare, infrastructure, and economic opportunities. You realize that the Igbo majority areas may not receive a fair share of government resources in development projects, leading to social economic challenges. Like I told you, it is now that some Igbos are waking up to, of course, embrace education. They are coming to Lagos and these other places to, of course, study. But for a very long time, they have not been given that privilege. And that's why for them, growing up with their whole life, they knew you have to of course, make money. Education wasn't something that was, of course, held highly, yeah, within the Igbo land, because all this was never, introduced to the area. Though there were some other places where in the Igbo land where education was like, but not everyone had access to that. And apparently, I think they were left to be whatever it is, maybe that they would, of course, uh, want to. We know that despite being one of the largest the Igbo people, despite being the largest ethnic groups in Nigeria, people have sometimes been underrepresented in political leaderships and decision-making processes. Now, this lack of political presentation can result in diminished voice in resource allocation and policy formulation, hindering efforts to address the millions of these other marginalized tribes, of course, accessing different means within their community. A lot of these marginalized or these other neglected tribes in Nigeria lag behind in infrastructure development compared to other regions of Nigeria. Limited investment in roads, electricity, healthcare facilities, and other essential services have also, of course, contributed to their underdevelopment. When we usually look at there are some other places in Nigeria that even cameras don't reach. And apparently, somebody was saying Nigeria is one of the biggest places that looks good now. I don't really agree with that. Because there are most of the country, most of the parts in Nigeria are slums. Are living these other estates and other places that most of the parts, the outskirts of these cities are so slummy. And there is that big part of Nigeria that the world doesn't see, where apparently even people are still sleeping in grass-thatched houses. No one will tell people. You will see people trying to say, who is that sleep? Who is that sleeping in grass-thatched houses? Where do you have such kind of places and blah blah? But you know very well there are people who are living in such kind of conditions in Nigeria because the government doesn't really care about such kind of people. There is a lot of difference. There is a lot of differences. There is a large gap between the poor and the rich people. And I think this is why at times it's so easy for governments to make such kind of decisions without noticing the poor. Because actually the poor are poor and the rich are rich. And I think this is has gotten not only to do with Nigeria but the entire Africa. Because apparently it's like it becomes so very hard for you to strive to leave that poverty level to reach somewhere. Everything is pulling you back, everything surrounding you is pulling you so down. The economy, the chances, and everything. And this, I think, is the problem that most African people in within the African country are actually experiencing. There is a high level of corruption within the Nigeria. Um, or there is always, our people always fear the Nigerian police a lot, and there is always that in the army. It is not like here in Uganda. Here in Uganda, people even stone the police. Someone will even start insulting the police officer. They will even insult soldiers. They will do the bullshit, everything. People don't respect those forces here. In Nigeria, my dear, looking even at a police officer for a very long time can get you into trouble. Looking at the soldier for a very long time, not even gazing, can cause you trouble. Now, you will realize that before now, there is a specific tribe that was in these two bodies. A specific tribe that was not that you will find this particular tribe in the Nigerian police and this other particular tribe in the Nigerian army, because for them they had access to education, they had chances to join and defend and protect their country. Now, if there is a particular tribe, a particular tribe that, let me say, 99.9% is that particular tribe leading this security defense force of that particular country, then you can be so very sure of that nobody is protecting these other tribes. And that is the system. We have those other big people in those big, places, in big positions, of course. So if we have those particular tribes swearing to protect or to keep law and order, and then they are they are not favoring certain tribes, then you will understand that Nigeria is a little bit messed up. I'm sorry to say. But it's of recent, actually, we are seeing some other tribes now, because after receiving education and a little bit privileges and connection, they are trying to join the army. But before now, it was specifically for a specific tribe of people. Um, I'll let you say to say something.
Um, Going back to of course, um, the conflict that is going on in Nigeria, and and uh, and and of course, uh, and Niger. So first and foremost, um, the current president, the president elect of Nigeria by now is of course Tinubu. Tinubu, this guy is of course the president of ECOWAS by now. He's the president of ECOWAS by now. Um, the current, of course, chairman of the Economic Committee of West African States is His Excellency Bola Ahmed, of course, Tinubu, who serves as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's assumed this position on July 9th, 2023. That's when he came in, succeeding President Umaru Sisoko of course, Guinea-Bissau. ECOWAS regional political and economic union aims it promotes economic integration, rising living standards, and foster economic development across member states, and it plays a crucial role in maintaining regional peace and stability. And its protocols include the free movement of persons and the Eco Tour action plan. But amongst the, of course, the objectives of the ECOWAS that we see, um, I'm looking at ECOWAS as an inferior like organization. It has been there for some good time, but this is an organization that is even weaker than the East African community. We know that the East African community like died some time back, but ECOWAS is doing nothing at all. ECOWAS, the economic community, we see that we have seen for the recent years, we have seen a lot of countries withdrawing from this organization after realizing that it is a fake organization for the West African countries. So the ECOWAS has been a crucial regional organization in West Africa for nearly 5 decades. That is a lot, 50 years. 50 years, it is a lot for such a fake organization to keep existing. So its primary goal is to promote cooperation, integration, and economic stability among the 15 member nations, like I said. However, the recent events raised concerns about its effectiveness in maintaining peace and stability in the region. Uh, when I was in school, we studied about ECOWAS. I see the same things it failed to address when it was 1 year old. They are the same issues that are still raising even up to now. We see that a lot of countries like Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso withdrew from this ECOWAS. I don't know whether because Tinubu is now the chairman executive of this ECOWAS organization. I don't know whether they first convinced Niger to come to this organization again before actually opening the borders between Nigeria and Niger. But we know that the unprecedented move of the three junta-led nations like Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso announced their immediate withdrawal from ECOWAS. They accused the organization of lacking support and imposing inhuman coup-related sanctions during their respective political upheavals. This is the thing I was talking about. Like ECOWAS or Nigeria, uh, it is not right for this organization and Nigeria in general to pose sanctions to, of course, these countries that have had coups, like of course Nigeria, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Just like you cooperate with those governments, work within those governments to keep peace. If at all the organization is to keep peace and stability within those West African countries. So these countries felt that instead of assisting them in combating security threats, ECOWAS took actions that hindered their efforts to stabilize their nations after coups. ECOWAS being supported by, of course, by the Europeans. Actually, it is supported by French. It doesn't like any form of any form of coup within the West African countries, because unless when it is supported by the French ECOWAS. So when they saw these people trying to stabilize their countries by, of course, I don't support coups, by of course waging coups in their countries. These people, the ECOWAS group at Nigeria, they imposed a lot of sanctions to these countries, so they decided to withdraw. It is it's not something to. It's not something funny for a country to withdraw in a regional group that is actually expected of providing or promoting peace and stability in the region. So the withdrawal poses a significant threat to the regional stability as ECOWAS plays a vital role in addressing domestic challenges and political and political economy and security. So ECOWAS faces criticism from citizens who believe it is not adequate or represented their interests, because whenever these countries join such organizations like the East African Community, ECOWAS, and others, there are things a country would expect to get out of this. There are things, if at all you talk about security, let that security be there. If at all you talk about regional cooperation, let that cooperation be there. Rather than these countries, like for example, Nigerian president right about now is the current chairman of this organization. All the powers are within that guy, Tinubu. All the powers are within that guy. So some perspective of ECOWAS are an exclusive leader club, like I said, that prioritize its member interests over those who are ordinary citizens. If you're not within the cabinet, you're not among the official member. You're not an official member. You're not going to gain in this. That's why very many countries are withdrawing from this kind of organization, because of course they are not getting anything out of the ECOWAS group. The instabilities we see in even in Nigeria. Why is it that ECOWAS is just sitting down? Why is it imposing sanctions on other countries? Yes, we see a lot of a lot of violences in Nigeria, but it's not talking about Nigeria. We see a lot of people that are the police brutality in Nigeria. We see a lot of things going on in Nigeria, even the closure of the border with Niger. But ECOWAS just sits there and keeps its mouth shut. So the loss of goodwill and support from the West African could undermine the ECOWAS's ability to address security crises and correlated challenges. So they look at coups as something which is larger. They look at like pose as something which is bad rather than addressing issues that are yet to be addressed in those countries. So, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso recently announced their withdrawal from ECOWAS, like I said. So, this decision came after months of tension between these coup-hit countries and the regional bloc. And the regional bloc. Why did these people leave this kind of organization? Yet it is expected. It's like a bank when you're poor and you're like you want to get a loan, you go to ECOWAS. So whenever there is an insurgence, there is a problem, challenges within West African countries. People like African leaders or people in West African countries, they're expected to go to ECOWAS for help. But this with ECOWAS, they did not give any support to these people. Lack of support. The juntas of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso expressed dissatisfaction with ECOWAS, accusing it of lack of support instead of assisting these nations in addressing security threats. ECOWAS allegedly imposed illegitimate, inhuman, and irresponsible sanctions when the coups occurred. The countries felt that ECOWAS did not stand by them during the critical times. Now it's coming to show support, but like, why do they don't see any sense in remaining in such a group if at all it can't give in support to those people? So there are even several decisions. So Mali, Niger, and of course Burkina Faso, the three governments emphasized that their withdrawal was a sovereign decision. Despite of being suspended from ECOWAS earlier, they chose to formally exit the bloc. This move marks the first time in ECOWAS's nearly 50-year history that members have withdrawn in such a manner. There is no reason why they like did these people sit down and cooperate on how to withdraw within the bloc, but it's because of the ECOWAS's behavior towards member states within the community. So even challenges of ECOWAS's reputation. ECOWAS has been having a bad reputation behind. We see that ECOWAS, established in 1975, aims to promote cooperation, integration, and economic stability in the region. However, some West Africans perceive the bloc as a losing goodwill and support citizens have raised concerns about not benefiting from the country's rich natural resources and view ECOWAS as a leaders' club rather than an organization representing their interests. So the withdrawal poses an unprecedented blow to the group and adds to the region's instability. It is this thing I was talking about, like such organizations, not even ECOWAS, even East African Community, they have a bad reputation. The legacy they have left behind ever since 1975, they have done nothing. Nothing. There is no member state apart from being the leaders, like you elected, you're the chairman of the ECOWAS. But people have not gained in this kind of stuff. People have not got any. Instead of people like enjoying the natural resources in the country, the thing is aiming at grooming leaders. Like they focus so much on leaders rather than implementing the aims of the organization. So, so, so ECOWAS as a community, as organization, it has its it has its challenges as an organization, which I don't think Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are the cause of this, because these things have been recurring over and over 50 years. There have been no positive results that it had ever achieved. uh, Security concerns, the region, the West African region, we know that security concerns, the region has witnessed an increase in terrorist activities, particularly in the countries of Mali, Burkina Faso, among others, which are now among of the world most affected terrorism. ECOWAS, it has not put any struggle to ensure security and stability. In the face of these threats, it just keeps quiet because it doesn't have people that have that spirit for West African people. It doesn't have people that know of course, the importance and significance of the aims of the organizations, and these are the leaders, starting them. Actually, someone may say that Tinubu was just elected last year in July. Yeah, he would have done something by now. He would have done something by now. The president of Guinea-Bissau was the former chairman of the organization, but he did nothing just because it is a club of leaders. So perceived influence from former colonial powers, like we talked about this at the beginning of this show, like ECOWAS is influenced so much by the former colonial masters. It is not an African-based supported organization. So critics argue that ECOWAS leaders are influenced by the former colonial masters, particularly France. France. I talked about France. This perceived alignment with colonial interests has led to persistent poverty in the member states. For instance, allegations that Niger's president was a French puppet contributed to his removal from power in a military coup. In a military coup, whenever we see coups in Africa, we shouldn't judge people. Why is it that a coup is going on in a certain country? People have different aims for coups. People set goals for why they are chasing a president, why they want to overthrow a government. Most of these countries that have left, actually, that have withdrawn from ECOWAS, they look at ECOWAS as an organization that is influenced by colonial powers. Yet this is an African organization. They influence any activity that is carried on in an organization. So, lack of effective response to coups. ECOWAS faces challenges in responding to coups within its member states, while it imposes sanctions on Niger after the coup. The military junta retained, defiant Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea, even plagued to encounter any ECOWAS military action in Niger, revealing animosity towards the organization. Before we go actually further with how a country is going to a coup, why is it that you don't orient the presidents within the member states of the organization, like not like people to get satisfied not to lead to a coup in a country? So the emergence of competing alliance responses to these issues, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger withdrew from ECOWAS and formed an alliance of Sahel states. So this new alliance seeks to address security concerns and economic ties with support from partners that are outside Africa. So there is a way Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger looked at things in a different way. There is a way they incorporated, they formed an alliance that is aimed at security concerns. If at all there is any security concern within the member states, if at all you are in the Sahel, of course, alliance, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger formed after withdrawing from ECOWAS. I think all member states in West African countries, I just wish them to join that alliance because ECOWAS is nothing. It's doing nothing. It is just influenced by, of course, former colonial masters.
The Alliance of Sahel States, which is also known as the AES in French, is a mutual defense pact, which is of course created between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. It was of course created on the 16th of September 2024, and the pact was created during the 2023 Nigerian crisis, in which the West African political bloc ECOWAS threatened to intervene militarily to restore civilian rule after a coup in Niger earlier that year. I'm seeing like basically the big reason why the president of Nigeria has opened the borders. It's because he's trying to lead by example. You cannot be the head of a bloc that, of course, is fighting for is fighting for peace, trade, yeah, within other countries, and again you are prohibiting what you are fighting for. So I think this could also be among the major reasons as to why he said he's definitely going to, of course, stand and, of course, lead by action, I guess. Now, this very alliance stated the goal, its goal is to protect against possible threats of armed rebellion or external aggression, emphasizing that any attack on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of one or more contracted parties will be considered an aggression against the other parties. I believe they started this very party to, of course, create that bond that is going to help them over these other countries because, of course, we have seen Nigeria trying to threaten these other countries, Niger, because they are starting a coup and all that. So these particular countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, who of course have now started this bloc, which of course is fully supported by Russia, and of course Ibrahim Traore is its leader as of now. They said, all right, if Nigeria is up against us, I guess we should form something that is going to help us, of course, fight back. And now this is how we see the existence of this particular uh, bloc. This is we see the alliance of the Sahel states, and we hope to see probably what which was, of course, started 5 months ago. We hope it creates positivity and and challenge these other blocks that we've seen that have actually just been there in picture. It should be remembered that ECOWAS was founded by Nigeria at a time. It was a suggestion that was brought about by Nigeria. So Nigeria as a country, it has a lot of influence when it comes to ECOWAS, but unfortunately it has failed. Nigeria has been failing throughout time. So I guess this is not the first time that we are seeing such kind of people. Now, this alliance of Sahel states is not to be confused with the Sahel Alliance, the Alliance Sahel in French, an international development initiative for the benefit of the G5 Sahel countries, launched in July 2017 by the African Development Bank, Canada, Denmark, and the European Investment Bank. All right, now the European Union, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, and these other countries, of course, supported by the African Bank, also had that alliance that is called Sahel Alliance, um, or the Alliance Sahel in French. But of course, this is just a newly alliance that has been, of course, put in place, and it's backed up by right now, the Russia people are full of support of this alliance that was made by uh, these three countries, and of course, they are being led by Ibrahim Traore. Now, if you look at these other alliances that are named the same, actually, were started by the French. And we all know that the French is up against Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso because they are definitely breaking away from them. And Russia is backing up this very country. We are waiting to see where this is going to, of course, take uh, the rest of these three countries. Let's see how strong they will be, and I hope if it is positively strong, we expect to see a lot of West African countries, or maybe even other countries, because this alliance has not closed borders to any other country. It is not talking about the east, west, or central, south. No, it is just an alliance that of course, is aiming at supporting those people who have the same cause, more especially those who are trying to fight against the oppressor. So probably we expect to see a lot of other African countries that would wish to do the same, maybe doing the same. We should remember that before the creation of ECOWAS, it was the collective territory known as the West Africa was made up of an aggregation of states that had emerged from different colonial experiences and administration, which largely defined the boundaries of the 15 states are domiciled in the area. Even though member states of the community now make use of three official languages, English, French, and Portuguese, there were well all there were well over 1,000 existing local language, including cross-border native tongues such as Ewe, Fulfulde, Hausa, Madingo, Wolof, Yoruba, Ga, etc. that constituted its over 300 million people who tackled in a vast land of about 5.1 million square kilometers. Now, we know that prior to colonialism, the area played host to many proud empires and kingdoms that spanned centuries, and some of which included Ghana, Mali, Songhai, Wolof, Oyo, Benin, and Kanem Borno. Now, the region's cultural, linguistic, and ecological diversity presents both opportunities and challenge for the integration process. Now, the long going to combine forces politically and economically has always been recognized as a step forward in the desire of gender co-spiracy in the co-prosperity in the area. We know that when this ECOWAS was started, we did not have a lot of influence over the Western people. Maybe at that time, maybe they were hiding behind the shelves or whatever it was. But would see that during this, we there were a lot of languages. People would communicate freely. It was larger than what it is right now. So people were okay to be who they are. And now it just engulfs and decides that people should use English, French, and Portuguese. You're not going to talk your Wolof, you're not going to talk your Yoruba, no Madingo, no Ga, no any other language during this ECOWAS summits, and of course these very languages. When we look at the ECOWAS states, which are the ECOWAS countries, which were among these very um, among this very umbrella, it was okay for you to study your local language in school until I think they were so perpetuated or invented by the Western people that they had to neglect these languages now. All they would study is French, English, and Portuguese. Because, of course, they are a body that seeks to agree on the same now issues. Now, in this regard, the first effort of integration dates back to the 1945 with the creation of CFA, the franc that brought the francophone countries of the region into a single currency union. Then in 1964, Liberia President William Tubman proposed an economic union for West Africa, leading to an agreement which was signed in 1965 by the four states of Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. However, it was not until 1972 that proposal for a union of West African states emerged. That year, the Nigeria head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, and his Togolese counterpart, Gnassingbe Ayadema, toured the region in support of the integration idea. Thanks to the drafts that emanated from their efforts, these formed the basis for the emergency of the Treaty of Lagos in 1975, which birthed ECOWAS. Now, the Treaty of Lagos was originally touted as an economic initiative, but emerging political events led to its revision and therewith the expansion of scope and powers in 1993. You can see that at that time, the treaties, of course, they signed, or the biggest purpose of ECOWAS at that time was an economic initiative. But as it went along the line, it turned into a political event, a political struggle, just like you see Nigeria, of course, influencing other countries' political, political governance. Of course, that means as they created this blog, there were a lot of hidden agendas that were put into place. It is very funny how greedy these African leaders are. I don't know whether there is a cult that runs within the political systems of Africa, that each time there is a specific cult that has to keep on winning all the time. And it is important a member of their cult wins all the time, because how what is the how does the leader in Niger actually has everything to do with Nigeria? It does not make sense, because these are two different countries. Why do they have a lot to do with Nigeria as a country at that time? Though we see during that time when, of course, the people who, the countries who joined the ECOWAS saw that there were too much emerging of political events, they had to sit down and revise, and of course, they expanded the scope and the powers in 1993. ECOWAS is meant to foster interstate economic and political cooperation. History is on its side in that regard. Dating back to pre-colonial times, West Africans have been among the world's most mobile population, although much of the migration have been intra-regional. About 7.5 million West African migrants, 3% of the regional populations, are living in ECOWAS countries other than their own. Now, the 1.2 million other migrants are dispersed mainly in North America and Europe. Now, they estimated about 149 million in 2013. Women constitute over 50% of the region's population. The cross border migration of women as traders and business persons places them as potential champions for promoting integration. This reality needs to be, of course, fully discussed. Now we see a lot of women, of course, involving themselves in this business. As you, like I said, there is, as we saw about the borders closing, Niger withdrawing from the ECOWAS, the border, Nigeria closing its border, but yet forgetting that it's 7.5 million West African migrants are moving within the ECOWAS states. So that means, as you complain about Mali, there are a lot of Nigerians in Mali, there are a lot of Nigerians in Niger, there are a lot of Nigerians in Burkina Faso, because these were the ECOWAS states and other ECOWAS states at that time. So, like I said, I think before even the African leaders decide to make decisions on their own, they should think about these other people and about their own people who are living outside their own countries. We know that the diverse social cultural dimension of development should be a necessary building block for establishing peace and security in the region. Of course, which is drawing strength from its past leadership of the community, about where people have to sacrifice to keep the shape of the political structure of the region. But this ECOWAS has lost every sense in its mission, because as much as the Nigerian government decide they are removing, or ECOWAS decides to evict or to suspend Niger and these other countries that, of course, staged a coup, because for them they felt like their mission is, of course, to bring peace. Where was the peace in Niger? That is a big question I'm even yet to understand. Where was peace in Niger? Where was peace in Burkina Faso? I think that the peace is when people have their freedom, and when people have access to what they want. Peace is when people have the freedom to vote whatever leader they want. The president of Burkina Faso was in power for God knows how long, and the killings and the death in Niger were so traumatizing. Now, how can such a bloc like ECOWAS come about and say, you standing to fight and defend yourself against such kind of inhuman presentations toward human life is something that is peaceful? I was expecting if such kind of course of a block is created, it should be up against such kind of behaviors. Probably maybe we would see a reaction from ECOWAS talking about this. But how can we talk about this yet the leaders were acting the same? So you cannot point at someone when the rest of the fingers are pointing at you, when actually you're just doing exactly the same thing, whoever you're going to talk to. So somebody needed to do something, and yes, Burkina Faso did something, and we have seen change, and they are doing something, and we hope to see maybe something better than that what they had before.
So, for me, actually, I'm happy with what, of course, Niger, Burkina Faso did in September 16th, 2023. I'm happy with what they did because all the orders are made by ECOWAS. So, if at all these guys from these countries, the Mali people, Niger, and Burkina Faso presidents, sat down and of course thought about forming something that is great like this, the alliance, the Sahel alliance. I'm so happy with these people. If at all the aims or the purpose for the forming of this alliance works in, We believe these people, the alliance is created. It was created during the 2023 Nigerian crisis, at a time when the West African political bloc ECOWAS threatened military intervention to restore civilian rule after the coup in Nigeria, in Niger, sorry, earlier that year. So this alliance, if at all, is going to be whatever that is within the purposes, they do what is in their aims and objectives. So it aims to protect against the threats of the armed rebellion, external aggression. It emphasizes that any attack on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of one contracted party will be considered an aggression against others. I like such solidarity among African states. If I told all African countries, we can have that solidarity in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger they are having. So the background of this alliance, the Sahel region has been grappling with an ongoing jihadist insurgents since 2003, leading to conflicts such as the Mali War and Boko Haram insurgents. So all three member states, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, have experienced overthrows of the pro-Western governments by their militaries. Each country is part of the coup belt, and notably, in 2020, we see a million coup d'etat assume and the National Committee for the Salvation of the People seized power after overthrowing the elected president Ibrahim Baker. So, Goita led a coup in 2021, disposing the interim president Bada, and of course, in Guinea in 2021, a coup saw the removal of the elected president Alpha Conde and the installation of the Madi Domboya. We see Burkina Faso witnessed a September 2022 coup with the faction its military overthrowing the existing government. So, most recently, the 2023 coup in Niger led to the removal of President Mohamed Bazoum. So, distinct from the Sahara Alliance, so we say that the alliance should not be confused with the Sahara Alliance that is international, like you said, but all the purposes for the formation of this alliance, I think, if at all they can put in place what they say, what is actually that has been breaked down. I think West African countries they should learn from this alliance and act decisively. So I would like to send my thanks to everyone that has been watching, the people that have not commented but have been watching us since the first hour. Thank you for watching us. Thank you for supporting us every day. Whenever we come in for discussions, you join our discussions. You watch us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for loving and supporting us. For those that have been watching us from Facebook page, Black Hot Fire Radio Station, and Twitter, Black Hot Fire Network 2, as well as no, Twitter is Black Hot Fire Net 1, and it is YouTube, which is Black Hot Fire Network 2. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting us. It has been me, INNOSSETU, with my colleague. We meet tomorrow, same time. Thank you for being part of the discussion.